Pregnant bride discovers betrayal on the eve of her wedding. She grabbed her phone and recorded everything. The next day, at the church, no one was prepared for what she did. Lucy smoothed the white dress, feeling the gentle weight of the fabric over her 7-month pregnant belly. The bump, once a source of worry, was now her greatest pride, a constant reminder of the life growing within her. Emma, the name she and Paul had chosen together on a lazy Sunday afternoon, dreaming of their future. From the window of her room in her parents' house, she could see the bustle in the backyard. Twinkling lights, flowers, and the final touches for the ceremony set to take place in less than 24 hours. Everything felt like a dream, carefully planned to be the happiest day of her life. Paul was the epitome of the perfect man. At 35, he was a successful entrepreneur in Seattle, with a smile that disarmed and a kindness that seemed innate. He treated her like royalty, not with grand empty gestures, but with the small details that truly mattered. A note left on her pillow, the way his hand always found hers at the movies, the way he spoke of our future with a spark in his eyes that felt like pure truth. To Lucy's family, he was more than a son-in-law. He was the answer to their prayers, the man who would finally give their daughter the happiness and security she deserved. At 29, Lucy felt like all the pieces of her life were finally falling into place. The pregnancy, though unplanned, was met with infectious joy by Paul. "It's a sign, my love," he said, kneeling before her, not to propose, as he'd already done that, but to kiss her still flat belly. A sign that we were meant to be together, to build our family. How could she doubt words spoken with such conviction? The party at her parents' house was a reflection of that collective happiness. Aunts, uncles, cousins, childhood friends, all gathered, celebrating the love they saw blooming. Laughter mingled with the soft music, creating a symphony of joy. Lucy watched it all with a serene smile, her hand resting protectively over Emma. She felt whole, loved, safe. It was a fairy tale, and she was the princess about to live her happily ever after. Yet, even in the most beautiful garden, a seed of doubt can find fertile soil. That seed was quietly taking root in the heart of Sarah, Lucy's cousin and maid of honor. Sarah, with her sharp eyes and an intuition that rarely failed, saw something the others, drunk on the moment's joy, couldn't. It wasn't anything solid, just a feeling, a chill down her spine whenever Paul's smile seemed a bit too forced, or when his gaze lingered a second too long elsewhere. She noticed micro-expressions, hesitations almost imperceptible, that cracked the facade of the perfect groom. Sarah knew that voicing suspicions without proof would be cruel, an act of sabotage on the eve of Lucy's most important day. Accusing the man her cousin loved, the father of her child, would be like dropping a bomb in the middle of the celebration. But silence ate at her too. She felt complicit in something she didn't understand, but instinctively knew was dangerous. Then, an idea, disguised as a romantic gesture, formed in her mind. She approached Lucy, who was chatting animatedly with an aunt about the nursery preparations. With a conspiratorial smile, Sarah pulled her aside to a quieter corner. "Luce, I've got an idea you're gonna love," she began, her voice brimming with calculated enthusiasm. "Paul's at that loft he rented in Capitol Hill, right? For his so-called Groom'S night to chill out." Lucy nodded, chuckling at her fiancé's formality. "Yeah, he said he needed some time to relax and mentally prep." "Silly, right?" "Not silly at all, it's tradition," Sarah corrected, handing her a small velvet box. "I got him a gift, custom cufflinks and this lingerie for you, and I think it'd be so much more special if you gave it to him yourself and told him how excited you are for tomorrow. Write him a last-minute note, something super personal, about how you can't wait for the big day. Imagine how emotional he'll get, getting this from you in person, hours before you meet at the altar. It's the kind of story couples tell their grandkids." The suggestion warmed Lucy's heart. It was indeed an incredibly romantic gesture, a final declaration of love before they became husband and wife. She hugged her cousin tightly. "Sarah, that's such a sweet idea. You always think of everything. He's gonna love it." "I'm sure he will," Sarah replied, her smile barely hiding the tension in her shoulders. "Go now, while it's not too late. It'll be the perfect surprise." As Lucy headed upstairs, her heart overflowing with love and anticipation. To write the most heartfelt letter of her life, Sarah stayed behind, watching her go. A lump formed in her throat. She didn't want to be right. She prayed her intuition was, for once, dead wrong. She prayed Lucy would arrive at the loft, deliver the gift, get a passionate kiss, and return home certain her fairy tale was real. But deep down, she knew she wasn't just suggesting a romantic gesture. She was handing Lucy the key, not just to the loft but to the truth, and she hoped her cousin had the strength to open the door, whatever scene awaited on the other side. The stage for the greatest twist in Lucy's life wasn't being set at the church, but in that very moment, in a decision that would change everything forever. With her heart racing, a mix of romantic excitement and the thrill of a well-planned surprise, Lucy drove through the streets of Seattle toward Capitol Hill. The velvet box, lingerie, and the hastily written letter sat on the passenger seat, a silent testament to her love. Every word she'd poured onto the paper felt small compared to the vastness of her feelings. She pictured Paul's expression, the genuine surprise, maybe a discreet tear of emotion. He'd hug her tightly, call her the most amazing woman in the world, and say he couldn't wait for tomorrow. That was the scene playing in her mind, a private movie that made her smile alone in the car. The building where Paul had rented the loft was sleek and modern, a symbol of the success he took such pride in building. She waved familiarly at the doorman, having been there before, and rode the quiet elevator up. The sixth-floor hallway was carpeted, muffling her footsteps and amplifying her pounding heart. She stopped in front of apartment 603. For a moment she hesitated. Maybe she should just leave the gift with the front desk? No, Sarah's idea was about the gesture, the connection, the personal surprise. She took a deep breath, her smile returning, and raised her hand to knock. But her hand froze mid-air. A sound pierced through the solid wood door, a sound that didn't belong in her private movie. It was laughter. A woman's laughter, loud and carefree, followed by a male voice she knew better than her own. Paul's voice. But it wasn't his joyful chuckle. It was something rawer, looser. Lucy frowned. He wasn't alone. Maybe a friend, a groomsman, had stopped by to keep him company. That was possible. But the woman's laughter, it didn't sound like a friend's. She stepped back, confusion starting to erode the certainty that had brought her here. Her instincts, that inner voice we so often ignore, screamed. Something was wrong. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. She approached the door again, not to knock this time, but to listen. She pressed her ear to the cold wood, her heart now hammering against her ribs with terrifying force. And then she heard it again. This time it wasn't laughter. It was a moan, a low, intimate, unmistakable sound. It made Lucy's blood turn to ice and the floor seemed to vanish beneath her feet. The gift in her hand suddenly felt like it weighed a ton. The letter, with its words of eternal love, now seemed like a cruel joke. The air left her lungs in a silent gasp. It couldn't be. It had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Maybe the TV was on, playing some loud movie. Yes, that must be it. Paul loved action flicks, the noisy kind. But his voice came next, clear, close, slicing through the air and shredding Lucy's veil of denial. "Easy, my love, easy. You're gonna wreck me before we even get started." The woman's laughter rang out again, a sound that now felt like nails on a chalkboard to Lucy's ears. "Isn't that the point? One last test drive before the big day?" Lucy's world began to crumble. The fairy tale she'd built with such care, such love, started to crack. Every word they exchanged was a sledgehammer to the foundation of her life. Trembling, she pulled her phone from her pocket. Her hands barely obeyed, her fingers slippery with cold sweat. She didn't know why she was doing this. It was an impulse, a desperate need to prove to herself she wasn't going insane. She opened the voice recorder app and hit the red button. The device, silent, began capturing the destruction of her future. "You're unbelievable," Paul's voice said, followed by the sound of a loud kiss. But what about tomorrow? What about the pregnant bride? The term pregnant bride, dripping with disdain, hit Lucy like a punch to the gut. She clutched her belly with her free hand, a protective gesture, as if she could shield Emma from those vile words. "Oh, Lucy," the woman replied, and the familiarity in her voice sent a new kind of terror down Lucy's spine. She knew that voice, knew it well. She doesn't need to know. She'll believe anything you tell her. She's the perfect little trophy for your successful family man shelf. The silence that followed was filled only by Lucy's ragged breathing and the ringing in her ears. Then Paul's voice, the same one that had promised her the world, that had called her his future, delivered the verdict that sealed his fate. That's exactly why I'm marrying her. The baby gives me the perfect excuse. The family, the image, it all fits. And once the ring's on her finger and my name's on our kid's birth certificate, then, my love, I'll have control over everything. The money, the business, her life. She'll never have the guts to leave me, not with a kid in her arms. She'll be the perfect wife, obedient at home, raising the heir while we keep having our fun, the woman finished, her voice laced with malice. Exactly, like we always have. Lucy tasted bile rising in her throat. The shock was so intense, it became physical, a sharp pain in her belly that made her double over. She leaned against the hallway wall to keep from collapsing, the phone still recording, her hand still gripping the velvet box. The man she was set to marry in hours didn't love her. He saw her as a pawn in his game, a means to an end. Her pregnancy wasn't a sign of fate. It was a tool for control. Her love, her devotion, her family, it was all a farce, a carefully staged set for Paul's theatre. And the woman who laughed at her naivety, who called her a trophy. Who was she? Lucy forced her mind to work through the fog of pain and betrayal. The voice, it was so familiar. And then, like a lightning bolt illuminating a horrific landscape, she knew. You just need to be careful tomorrow, Rachel, Paul said. Play the perfect maid of honor and best friend. Cry if you have to. You're a good actress. Rachel. The name detonated in Lucy's mind like a bomb. Rachel, her friend, one of her closest friends, the woman who helped her pick out her wedding dress, the woman who threw her baby shower, the woman who'd stand by her side at the altar, holding her bouquet, witnessing her vows. Rachel, who'd hugged her the night before, gushing about how happy she was for her and Paul. The betrayal was already an abyss, but learning the other woman was someone she trusted, someone she called a friend, turned the abyss into an infinite void, threatening to swallow everything she was. Lucy couldn't breathe anymore. The hallway air felt toxic. She stopped the recording, slipping the phone into her pocket with a robotic motion. Her body moved on pure survival instinct. She turned and walked back to the elevator, each step a monumental effort. There were no tears. The shock was so profound, the pain so overwhelming it dried up every source. She was an empty shell, a spectator to her own demolition. In the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She saw a pale woman with wide, vacant eyes, clutching a small velvet box. The joyful bride from minutes ago was gone, replaced by this stranger carrying the weight of an unbearable truth. Down in the lobby, she passed the doorman without seeing him. The outside world felt distant, muffled, as if she were underwater. Sitting in her car in the parking lot, she finally let go of the gift box. It fell to the passenger seat with a dull thud. Lucy sat there motionless, hands on the steering wheel, staring into nothingness. The audio played on a loop in her mind, every word, every laugh, every moan seared into her memory like a brand. The pain came in waves, first disbelief, then denial, and finally a cold, sharp fury began to rise from her core, not loud or hysterical, but silent, precise, and lethal. They'd called her a trophy, a docile bride. They thought they could control her. They thought she was weak. Paul believed the marriage and the baby would be her chains. He couldn't have been more wrong. In that moment, in the silence of her car with her heart in 1,000 pieces, Lucy felt something new awaken inside her, alongside her daughter's life. It wasn't despair. It was resolve. They wouldn't see her tears. They wouldn't get the satisfaction of watching her crumble. They wanted a spectacle? They'd get one, but the script wouldn't be Paul's anymore. From that moment on, the script was hers, and the final act would be something no one, absolutely no one, was prepared to witness. The drive back to her parents' house was a blur. The city lights, once a celebration of her future, were were now just smears of color in a world that had lost all shape. Lucy didn't cry. Tears felt like a luxury, an emotional release she couldn't afford. The pain was so deep, so absolute, it morphed into something else, an icy clarity, a razor-sharp focus that hardened her heart and honed her mind. The shock had passed, giving way to a terrifying calm, the calm before the perfect storm. She was no longer the dreamy bride. She was a strategist, and the battlefield would be her own life. Stepping into her parents' house, the sound of the pre-wedding party still lingered, but to Lucy it was like hearing a recording from a distant time, another life. She managed a smile for her mother, who rushed over with a worried look. "You okay, sweetheart? You look so pale." "Just tired, Mom." "The excitement, the pregnancy." "I'm gonna head upstairs to rest before dinner," Lucy lied, her voice steady without a hint of a quiver. The ease with which the lie slipped out surprised her. It was as if a new part of her, one she didn't know, had taken the reins. Locked in the safety of her childhood bedroom, she didn't let herself collapse. She didn't glance at the wedding dress hanging on the door, a white ghost of broken promises. Instead, she sat at her old desk, where she'd done homework and scribbled secrets in diaries as a teen. She pulled out her phone and listened to the recording one more time, not to relive the pain, but to cement her resolve. Every word from Paul, every laugh from Rachel, was fuel for the fire now raging inside her. She deleted the recording from her phone, but not before saving it in 3 places: her email, a cloud storage account, and a tiny USB drive tucked deep in a drawer. Evidence, proof, ammunition. Her first call wasn't to a friend, her mother, or to confront the traitor. It was to the man who'd always been her rock, her protector, beyond her father, her godfather, Michael. A shrewd businessman, a man of few words but unwavering loyalty to his family. He was also, by a twist of fate, one of the earliest and biggest investors in Paul's company, persuaded by Michael himself to back the brilliant future son-in-law. He answered on the second ring. "Lucy, something wrong. Is the baby okay?" "The baby's fine, Uncle Mike. I'm not," she said, her voice low but laced with an urgency that silenced him on the other end. "I need a huge favor, and I need you to trust me. No questions asked. Not yet, at least." There was a pause. Lucy could picture him, brow furrowed, his business instincts already on alert. "I'm listening. I want you to pull every cent you've invested in Paul's company, and I want it done tomorrow, first thing. Call the other investors you know, the ones who joined because of you. Tell them you're out, that you've lost faith in the business. They'll follow your lead. Create a domino effect. I want his house of cards to start crumbling before he even knows what hit him." The silence on the line was heavy. Michael wasn't a man who acted on impulse. His wealth was built on logic, data, and an aversion to drama. What Lucy was asking went against his business principles. But she wasn't business. She was his goddaughter. "Lucy, that's extreme. It could tank the company, ruin Paul. What happened?" "Tomorrow at the church, you'll understand everything," she replied, her voice hard as steel. "Until then, I just need this. Trust me. For the love you've always said you have for me, for my mum, do this, please." She didn't need to say more. The gravity in her voice, the absence of hysteria, the surgical precision of her request, it told Michael something fundamental had shattered. This wasn't a bride's whim. It was a battle cry. "Consider it done," he said finally. "First thing tomorrow. No one will know it came from you." Lucy hung up, a small part of the pressure in her chest easing. The first pillar of Paul's empire was rigged to fall. Now the second, the legal pillar. Her next call was to her lawyer, Ms. Karen, a woman known for her ruthless efficiency and discretion. It was nearly 8 p.m., but Lucy knew Karen always answered for clients in crisis. "Ms. Karen, it's Lucy. I need an urgent job." "Lucy, I thought you'd be floating on cloud 9 by now. The wedding's tomorrow, right? Congrats." "There won't be a wedding," Lucy said, the words dropping like a stone into the silence. "At least not a legal one. I know we already signed the papers at the courthouse. The certificate's probably ready to go after the ceremony. I want you to stop it, cancel it, shred it, whatever it takes to make sure I'm not legally Paul's wife for even a second." Karen, used to twists, paused before shifting gears entirely. Got it? That'll take immediate action the moment the courthouse opens tomorrow. I'll need a reason, a power of attorney from you. You'll have everything, Lucy cut in. Prep the documents. I'll sign digitally tonight. The reason? You'll hear it tomorrow, with the rest of the guests. Just make sure that when the church ceremony ends, I walk out as single as I walked in. Don't worry, Lucy. If you don't want to be married, you won't be. I'll handle it personally, Karen assured, her voice now radiating competence and empathy. With the two pillars, financial and legal, set to collapse, Lucy felt a bone-deep exhaustion settle in. But there was still the bachelorette party downstairs, her family, and Rachel, who was surely there, laughing and toasting to her friend's happiness. Lucy had to go down. She had to face the enemy. She looked in the mirror, washed her face, applied a touch of makeup to hide the deathly pallor, practiced a smile. It was a fragile mask, but it would do. She descended the stairs, and the first person she saw was her, Rachel. Stunning in a flowy dress, a glass of champagne in hand, she rushed toward Lucy with a beaming smile. "Luce, where have you been?" "We were worried," she said, reaching for a hug. Lucy stepped back, a subtle move, almost invisible to others, but it stopped Rachel cold. "Just needed some air." "Wanted a moment alone," Lucy replied, her smile fixed. Rachel's eyes flickered for a split second. "Oh, sure. Bride jitters. Totally normal. But tomorrow's going to be the best day of your life, you'll see." "I'm sure it'll be unforgettable," Lucy shot back, locking eyes with Rachel. In that gaze, she let a tiny spark of her icy fury slip through. It was enough. Rachel looked away first, uneasy, and took a sip of her drink. The rest of the night was a blur of performances. Lucy chatted, smiled, accepted congratulations, talked about the baby. Each interaction was a Herculean effort, but she held steady. She moved with a calm that bordered on supernatural. No one suspected. No one saw the cracks beneath the makeup. No one felt the ice in her heart. She was an actress on the stage of her own tragedy, quietly setting the scene for the final act. Amid the forced cheer, one pair of eyes watched Lucy differently. Sarah, the unwitting architect of this disaster, felt a pit in her stomach. She saw the mask her cousin wore. She knew Lucy too well to miss the stiffness in her smile, the lack of light in her eyes, the way her body held itself rigid, like a soldier in enemy territory. When Lucy dodged Rachel's hug, Sarah noticed. When Lucy held Rachel's gaze with an unnatural coldness, Sarah understood. Her intuition hadn't been wrong. The worst had happened. Guilt flooded her, but it was quickly replaced by wary admiration. Lucy wasn't crying in her room. She was arming herself. Sarah decided, silently, that her role was no longer to question, but to support. She'd wait. She'd be the quiet backup for whatever Lucy was planning. Around 10 p.m., Lucy raised her hand, calling for everyone's attention for a brief moment. The music softened. "Dear friends, family, thank you for being here." "My heart's overflowing," she said, her voice sounding impossibly genuine. "But now the bride and Emma need some rest. I want to look perfect for my big day tomorrow." The words were met with cheers and whistles. The next morning dawned with a clear, unforgiving light. To the world it was Lucy and Paul's wedding day. To Lucy, it was Judgment Day. Her heart didn't race with bridal nerves, but with the adrenaline of a soldier before battle. The salon team arrived on time: hairdresser, makeup artist, masseuse. The house filled with cheerful chatter and the scent of hairspray and cosmetics. Lucy submitted to it all with robotic compliance. As the masseuse worked her tense shoulders, she closed her eyes and rehearsed the plan. The tiny audio player, no bigger than a button, was sewn discreetly into the base of her bouquet, the lapel mic's wire hidden among the white rose's stems. It was simple tech, but it would be the day's most powerful weapon. Her mother entered the room, eyes misty. "You're so calm, honey. Calmer than me." "I'm at peace, Mom. I know exactly what I'm doing," Lucy replied. And it wasn't a lie. When the dress was slipped on, the veil adjusted, she looked in the mirror. The reflection was a fairy tale bride, perfect, radiant, serene. But her eyes told a different story. There was a depth there, an iron resolve that didn't match the tulle and silk. It was the tragic beauty of an avenging angel. The drive to the church was quiet. Beside her in the car, her father held her hand, talking about how proud he was. Lucy nodded, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. With every block closer, the adrenaline surged. Fear and determination waged war within her. What if she faltered? What if the pain paralyzed her? She gripped the bouquet, feeling the hard outline of the device. No, she wouldn't falter. The music began. The church doors opened, and there he was at the altar. Paul, handsome in his tux, a smug smile on his face. Beside him, the groomsmen. And among the bridesmaids, Rachel in an emerald green dress, her face a mask of fake emotion. Their eyes met for a moment, a flicker of complicity that went unnoticed by all but the woman walking toward them. The ceremony unfolded like a fever dream. The readings, the prayers, the priest's words about love and fidelity rang hollow and ironic. Lucy kept her smile, her eyes locked on Paul. She saw through him, saw the contempt, the arrogance, the lie. When the time came for the vows, the priest turned to Paul, who took the mic with confidence. He spoke of the day they met, how she changed him, the blessing of Emma's arrival. Each word was a knife twisting in Lucy's wound. The church sighed, moved by his declaration of love. Then it was her turn. The priest handed her the mic. Silence blanketed the room. Every eye was on her, expecting the loving words of the radiant pregnant bride. Paul looked at her expectantly, his smile that of a man awaiting his victory. Lucy raised the mic to her lips. Her hand, hidden by the bouquet, found the tiny button. "I, too, thought our love was a fairy tale," she began, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the speakers. "I thought I'd found a man who respected me, loved our daughter who's on her way." She paused, letting the emotion hang in the air. "But yesterday I learned that some fairy tales are actually horror stories in disguise." A murmur rippled through the church. Paul's smile faltered, replaced by confusion. Rachel stiffened. "Instead of the vows I wrote," Lucy continued, her voice gaining a steel edge, "I'd like to share with you all the vows my groom made yesterday. To another woman." And then she pressed the button. The church's silence was shattered. A woman's carefree laugh, followed by Paul's voice. "Easy, my love, easy. You're going to wreck me before we even get started." A shocked gasp came from the front pews. Paul's face morphed into a mask of panic and disbelief. He stepped toward Lucy, but froze, paralyzed by the sound of his own treacherous voice. "And the pregnant bride? Oh, Lucy. She'll believe anything you tell her. She's the perfect little trophy." Rachel's unmistakable voice echoed through the sacred space. Lucy's mother clapped a hand over her mouth, her father's face twisted in rage. Guests turned, searching for the other woman, their eyes landing on Rachel, who stood pale as a ghost, her jaw trembling. "Once the ring's on her finger, and my name's on our kid's birth certificate. Then, my love, I'll have control over everything." Paul's final confession sealed his fate. When the audio ended, the silence that followed was heavier and louder than any sound. It was a silence of horror, scandal, and pity. Lucy switched off the device. She lifted her chin and looked straight at the broken man before her. "The wedding's off," she declared, her voice ringing with unshakable authority. She turned to the guests, who stared in a mix of shock and awe. "And so there's no doubt. The woman my ex-fiancé was with yesterday, the one who called me a trophy, is my friend and maid of honor, Rachel." She pointed the bouquet at Rachel. Every eye turned to her. Cornered, humiliated, Rachel let out a sob and fled down the side aisle, her heels echoing her disgrace. Lucy turned, handed the bouquet and mic to her stunned father, and walked back down the aisle, head high. Sarah followed, grabbing her hand. She was no longer a jilted bride. She was a queen leaving behind the ruins of a kingdom of lies. The church doors opened for her, not to a future with Paul, but to one that for the first time belonged solely to her and her daughter. The moment Lucy turned her back on the altar, the church, frozen in shock, erupted into chaos. The silence gave way to a cacophony of whispers, exclamations, and the unmistakable sound of chairs shifting. Paul, left at the altar like a monument to his own humiliation, stammered an explanation, but his voice was drowned out. Rachel's parents, pale with shame, slipped out quickly, while Lucy's parents, after a moment of stunned silence, rushed to support their daughter. But amid the pandemonium, another sound stood out, one that would shape the next chapter for everyone involved, the subtle click of dozens of phones recording. In the digital age, no drama of this scale stays private. Guests, still reeling from the theatrical scene, were already sharing videos. Short clips filmed from different angles began popping up on social media before Lucy even reached the car. The first post from a younger cousin came with a simple caption, "My cousin is the bravest woman I know." That was enough. The algorithm, hungry for raw drama, did its job. Within an hour, the video of the bride exposing her groom's betrayal at the altar was no longer a family secret. It was a phenomenon. Hashtags emerged organically, sprouting from the collective digital consciousness. Altar revenge, and the most powerful, we are all Lucy. People who didn't know Lucy, who knew nothing of her life, watched those seconds of footage and saw something universal, the courage to say, enough. They saw a woman who, at her most vulnerable, found unimaginable strength. Unknowingly, Lucy had become a symbol. For Paul, the fall was as swift as the video's virality. The next morning, waking from a haze of alcohol and despair, he found the world had already judged him. The first call was from Michael, Lucy's godfather, coldly informing him he was pulling all his investments. The news spread like wildfire in Seattle's business circles. Other investors, fearing the scandal's taint and following a heavyweight like Michael, did the same. Contracts were cancelled. Partners distanced themselves. Paul's company, built on an image of trust and success, imploded within days. The successful family man was now a pariah, his reputation reduced to digital ashes. Rachel faced a different kind of hell. The social fallout was instant and brutal. Mutual friends blocked her. The bridesmaids' group chat kicked her out without a word. Her own family, mortified by the public disgrace, treated her with icy disdain. She couldn't leave her house without facing scornful looks or hearing whispers branding her the other woman, the fake friend. Unable to bear the weight of judgment, she packed her bags and vanished, seeking anonymity in another city, leaving behind the wreckage of her social life. Meanwhile, Lucy took refuge in her parents' home, building a protective cocoon for herself and the daughter she carried. She unplugged from the world for a few days, ignoring hundreds of messages and calls. She needed time to process not just the betrayal, but the woman she'd become in its wake. The adrenaline of revenge gave way to profound exhaustion, and the tears finally came. She wept for the love she'd believed in, the future stolen from her, the friendship revealed as a lie. But amid the pain, something else began to emerge. Messages from strangers started piercing her cocoon, emails, Instagram DMs, comments on her friends' posts. Your courage gave me the strength to leave my abusive husband. I felt worthless after a betrayal, but watching you made me hold my head high. Thank you for showing us we don't have to settle for less than we deserve. Lucy read each message, and it dawned on her that her story was no longer just hers. It had touched a collective wound, given voice to a pain millions of women felt in silence. Her exposed pain had become a beacon for others, and in that moment a new idea, a new purpose began to take shape. A week after the non-wedding, sitting in her parents' living room with a calm she hadn't felt in ages, she grabbed her phone, opened YouTube, and hit Create Channel. The name came instantly, The Vows I Made to Myself. Her first video was raw, no production, no makeup, just her on the couch, the window's light on her face and her prominent belly. With unflinching honesty, she told it all. From the love that seemed perfect to the discovery in the loft's hallway, the silent preparation, and the altar confrontation. She didn't paint herself as a hero, but as a wounded woman who chose to fight. The response was overwhelming. The video hit 1 million views in 48 hours. But more than the numbers, it was the comments that mattered. The The comment section became a confessional, a support group. Women shared their own stories of betrayal, toxic relationships, and triumph. They didn't just want to consume Lucy's story. They wanted to share theirs. Lucy found her new mission. Her channel evolved. She began reading the stories sent to her, anonymously with permission, discussing them, offering not expert advice but the solidarity of someone who'd been there. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of contrasting emotions. As The Vows I Made to Myself grew, becoming a phenomenon of sisterhood and mutual support, Lucy's personal life turned inward, toward the miracle in her womb. Each kick, each movement from Emma reminded her of the real reason for her fight. It wasn't just for herself, but for the daughter who deserved to be born into a world where her mother was whole, strong, and in charge of her own fate. The pregnancy, once a tool of control in Paul's hands, was reclaimed by Lucy. It became the ultimate symbol of her rebirth. Her bond with her parents, always strong, deepened into something profoundly moving. They saw the strength radiating from their daughter, and admiration replaced pity. Their home, once the stage for a failed wedding party, became a sanctuary of love and anticipation, focused entirely on the arrival of the newest family member. Emma's birth was intense, powerful, transformative. The moment Lucy held her daughter, gazing at that tiny, perfect, wrinkled face, every scar from her past sealed shut. The love that flooded her was so overwhelming, so pure, it left no room for resentment or bitterness. Paul, Rachel, the betrayal. They became small, insignificant, next to the magnitude of that moment. She'd fought for this peace, and now she held it in her arms. Emma wasn't a reminder of betrayal, but living proof of her victory. Motherhood consumed her in the most beautiful way. Sleepless nights, diaper changes, breastfeeding. Each challenge was met with a serenity and love that astonished everyone. She devoted herself to Emma with complete presence, finding joy in the simplest things. Her first smile, the soft sound of her breathing, the warmth of her tiny body against hers. At the same time, her channel continued to flourish. She filmed during Emma's naps, often with her daughter sleeping in a sling against her chest. That authenticity only endeared her more to her audience. The women who followed her didn't see a distant influencer, but a real mother, a real woman, navigating the joys and challenges of single motherhood while building a career and healing her heart. The channel's success spilled beyond YouTube. Invites started rolling in, first for podcast interviews about women's empowerment, then for Instagram lives with psychologists and relationship therapists, where her story sparked deep discussions about relationships, self-worth, and resilience. Lucy, who'd never imagined herself as a public figure, discovered she had a voice, and people wanted to hear it. Lucy's life settled into a fulfilling rhythm. Her days were filled with the joys of motherhood and the purpose of her work. Emma grew healthy and giggly, oblivious to the drama that preceded her birth, and the channel became an ever stronger community. But the past, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of creeping back when least expected. And Lucy's past had a name: Paul. The first call came from an unknown number. Lucy, used to calls from PR teams and producers, answered without hesitation. The silence on the other end was the first red flag. Then, the voice. The same voice that haunted her memories, now stripped of its arrogance, tinged with a whiny, pathetic tone. "Lucy, it's me." Her stomach turned to ice. "What do you want, Paul?" "I see you. Your videos. I see what you did to me," he started, self-pity dripping from every word. "You destroyed me. My life, my company. All because of one mistake, one slip. Couldn't you have forgiven me privately? Did you have to make that circus? You turned me into a monster for the whole world to see, while you play the saint, the hero." Lucy felt a wave of nausea. His attempt to flip the blame, to play the victim, was so vile it left her speechless for a moment. "I didn't do anything to you, Paul. I just showed everyone who you really are. The words were yours. The actions were yours. Now deal with them." She hung up, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from an old anger she thought she'd overcome. But it didn't stop there. Calls from unknown numbers became frequent, Messages from fake profiles appeared on her social media, some accusing, some begging for a talk. He started showing up where she went. A glimpse of him across the street from her favorite coffee shop, his car parked a block from her parents' house. He never approached, just made himself seen. It was an intimidation tactic, a way to say, "I'm still here, I can reach you." Unease began to seep into her hard-won peace. She tightened security, started glancing over her shoulder, feeling his shadow looming over her life. The final escalation came as a legal notice. Paul had hired a lawyer and was filing for shared custody of Emma. The document was a masterpiece of manipulation, painting Lucy as an unstable, vengeful woman using her daughter for clout, while he was the repentant father desperate to bond with the child denied to him. The legal battle was grueling and ugly. But Lucy had truth and evidence on her side. Her lawyer, the formidable Ms. Karen, dismantled Paul's every claim. The audio of the betrayal, witnesses to his erratic behavior, and his history of harassment were presented. The judge, a seasoned woman, saw through the charade. Paul didn't get shared custody. Visitation rights were granted, but strictly supervised and contingent on a psychological evaluation. It was a win for Lucy, but a bitter one, leaving her drained and emotionally raw. It was after this final courtroom defeat that Paul seemed to break at last. Weeks passed in silence. The harassment stopped. The calls ceased. Lucy cautiously began to breathe easier. Then, one day, he showed up. Not lurking across the street, but at her parents' front door, standing in the afternoon sunlight. He looked different. Thinner, haggard, shoulders slumped. The arrogant entrepreneur was gone. Before her stood a defeated man. Lucy met him on the porch, asking her parents to stay inside with Emma. She felt no fear, just a deep weariness. They sat in silence for a moment, the same heavy silence that once existed between them, but now for entirely different reasons. I'm sorry, he said at last, his voice low. There's no excuse. What I did was monstrous. What I said about you, about our daughter, unforgivable. And what I did after, trying to blame you, stalking you. It was the act of a desperate, pathetic man. I lost everything, Lucy, and I realized I deserved to lose it all. He looked at her, eyes filled with remorse that for the first time seemed genuine. I'm not here to ask to come back. I know that's impossible. I needed you to hear this from me. I'm sorry. Lucy listened with a calm that startled him. She studied him, not as the man she loved or the monster who betrayed her, but as a distant figure from her past. The pain, the anger, the thirst for revenge. It had all been processed, transformed, released. I know you're sorry, Paul, she said, her voice soft but firm, and I accept your apology. But I need you to understand something. She leaned forward slightly, ensuring he felt the weight of her next words. I forgave you a long time ago, but I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. I had to let go of the hate to be the best mother to my daughter. My heart, which was once yours, is now full of two things: the immense love I have for Emma and the self-love I fought so hard to rebuild. She stood, signaling the end of the conversation. You can see your daughter on the court-ordered days. It's your right and it's hers. But beyond that, don't contact me again. Our story is over. The forgiveness I gave you was my full stop. Now please go. Paul looked at her for a long moment, absorbing the finality of her words. He nodded slowly, stood, and walked away without looking back. As Lucy watched him leave, she felt the last invisible chain tying her to the past snap. She was, finally and completely, free. With Paul's ghost finally exorcised, Lucy felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. Peace wasn't something she had to fight for anymore. It was the air she breathed. Her life settled into a rhythm of genuine happiness, woven with Emma's giggles, her family's warmth, and the fulfilling purpose of her channel, which surpassed 100,000 subscribers, becoming a vibrant community where women drew strength from one another. To celebrate this milestone and her new chapter, Lucy decided to write a book. She compiled her reflections, the lessons learned, and the most impactful stories shared by her followers. The title was a nod to her journey and mission, The Vows I Made to Myself. The book was an instant hit, not just for her story, but because it resonated with thousands of women who'd had to choose themselves at some point. The messages she received daily were a testament to her work's impact. Thank yous, confessions, celebrations of small and big wins. Each one reminded her that her pain had become a beacon. On a rainy Tuesday, while Emma, now a chatty, almost 2-year-old, napped in her room, Lucy sat to read the day's emails. One, titled, "A Vow You Helped Me Make," caught her eye. She opened it. The words that followed made the world stop. "Dear Lucy, you don't know me, but I feel like I know you. My name is Emily. 6 months ago, my world fell apart. I found out the man I was set to marry was not only cheating, but had a whole other family in another state. The humiliation, the pain, it was too much. I saw no way out, no future. That night, I decided I didn't want to live anymore. I wrote a goodbye letter, got everything ready. All that was left was the final step. As I sat there on my apartment floor, phone in hand to send one last text to my mom, the algorithm suggested a video. The title was "The Bride Who Exposed Betrayal at the Altar." I don't know why I clicked, maybe morbid curiosity. And then I saw you. Your courage, your pain, your strength. I saw you walk out of that church, not as a victim, but as a queen. And as I watched, something in me shifted. I saw there was a choice. I saw that the end of one story didn't have to be the end of my life. I watched another of your videos, then another. I spent the whole night binging your channel crying, but for the first time in months they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of possibility. That night, because of you, I made a new vow. Not to a man, but to myself. I vowed to live. Today, 6 months later, I'm in a new city with a new job and in therapy. There are still tough days, but now I know I'm stronger than they are. I wanted you to know this. You didn't just inspire me. You, Lucy, saved my life. I'm forever grateful. I'd like to share my story on your channel to inspire other women too. Lucy finished reading with tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness or joy, but of an emotion so profound it had no name. She looked out the window at the rain washing the world outside and felt her own soul being cleansed. All the pain, the humiliation in the loft's hallway, the cold fury, the church battle, the harassment, it had all led to this moment. Every agonizing step of her journey had been a rung on a ladder, allowing her to reach out and pull someone like Emily back from the brink. Her pain hadn't just been a burden, it had become her mission. She stood and went to her daughter's room. Emma slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Her blonde curls formed a halo around her head. Lucy knelt by the bed, stroking her daughter's face, tears still falling silently. In that tiny being, she saw her whole world. Emma was no longer just the symbol of her personal rebirth. She was the symbol of every life touched, every woman who found strength, every Emily who chose to live. Her daughter was hope incarnate, living proof that even from the deepest darkness, a radiant new dawn can always rise. And in that moment, gazing at the future sleeping peacefully before her, Lucy understood that the most important vows aren't those made to others at church altars, but the silent, unbreakable vows we make to ourselves in the sanctuary of our own hearts. And so Lucy's journey shows us that even from the ashes of the greatest disappointment, a woman can rise, not just to rebuild her own life, but to light the way for others. The stories we tell here on our channel are like Lucy's, inspired by many real stories of betrayal, separation, and most importantly, triumph. To protect those who trust us, we change names, some details, and sometimes even the ending, always with the consent of the person who shared their journey. We want this space to remain what it's become, a place of sisterhood, support, and transformation. If you have a story and feel sharing it could help others, or simply need to be heard, we're here. Our contact email is in the channel's description. Now, if you love hearing these stories and believe in their power, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps YouTube share this message of strength with more people who might need it. And of course, Subscribe to the channel to support us and catch our next stories. Big hug and see you in the next video.